Today I'm working on putting the motor and trans together to put onto the chassis of my 1987 F250. To do that, before I can put the trans and the engine together, I need to put the clutch and flywheel onto the back of the engine. To do that, I'm going to use a kit that I got from Advanced Auto Parts. The kit that I got comes with the clutch, the flywheel, a throwout bearing, a pilot bearing, and an alignment tool, as well as the bolts to put it all together. It's not the first time I've done a clutch on this truck, but in the time that the truck's been apart, the clutch got put into the plow truck, and therefore I'm going to put a new one on this truck. So to start, I'm going to put the pilot bearing into the flywheel here, and to do that, on the pilot bearing there's a little lip that you can see in the film, and so that's just going to get set right down into it, and I'm going to tap it in with a socket. So maybe not the best idea to place the camera on the flywheel as I hit the flywheel, but now the pilot bearing is tapped in nice and flush all the way around. For this particular motor, I was able to use a 1-inch socket. It fit over the outside almost perfectly, and the inside didn't touch in the raised portion here. So now that the pilot bearing's put in, I'm ready to put the flywheel onto the back of the engine. And as you can see from right here, it's missing a bolt hole, essentially. What that does is it means that the flywheel is balanced to only go on the back of the engine one way. So you have to align it so that way it meets up properly. So on the back of the motor here, you can again see that it is missing the one bolt hole to place the motor in, or to attach the flywheel to the back of the motor. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift up the flywheel and get it aligned. So that way I can see in each one of these holes. Which I can. So now I will go through and start putting all these bolts in. The bag comes with the bolts, or the kit comes with the bolts that I got, which unfortunately the kit is no longer available. I bought this kit a couple years ago. It's just been a while. But I called the company that makes the kit, and the torque spec for these bolts is 80 foot-pounds. So 80 foot-pounds is what we are going to tighten these down to. And then we'll be ready to put the clutch disc onto the back of the flywheel here, and then put the pressure plate on over top of it. So now I'm going to go ahead and tighten all the bolts. There are 9 of them, and so since there are 9 of them, I'm going to do a star pattern where I start here, I go up, down, up, and across, and then I'll do the same thing going the other way, up, down, up, and across, and just pretending that there's one here. So I have my torque wrench set to 80 foot-pounds, and we'll tighten them down. So now I have the torque, or the flywheel bolts all torqued down. You could see me struggle a little bit with the flywheel wanting to move, so I ended up taking a pry bar and sticking it through the exhaust here. I was able to get a grip on the flywheel here to keep it from moving, because as you get up towards the torque value, the engine wants to turn over. But now we're going to take and put the clutch disc on. I'm actually going to go get some brake clean and a rag, and I'm going to clean this off real fast. As you can kind of see, this pack has been sitting for a long time, that the plastic actually went and grabbed a little bit of the machining oil that they put on these, and on top of the pressure plate it actually says that this is from 2014 was when this was made. So it's been around a little while. We're just going to wipe it off. I'm not too worried about anything that's on it, because honestly it's all going to get wiped off when the clutch engages, similar to how a brake rotor, after it's been sitting for a while, becomes clean once the vehicle's driven for a minute. So this surface, I might use up a little bit more of the clutch, but I'm not gonna worry about it because the truck's not gonna be doing any hauling really, or anything when I'm done with it. So the kit comes with this really nice tool here. It's a clutch installation tool. It slides right in here, mimics the input shaft. So it goes right in the pilot bearing, and we stick it right through the center of our clutch disc. The clutch disc on this side has some writing that says flywheel side, so you want to make sure that that matches up. Put that in there and just set the clutch disc right on it. You have a little bit of movement, but not a whole lot to go up and down, to adjust that as needed. So now I'm going to add the flywheel, or not the flywheel, the pressure plate. And again, the kit came with a couple bolts to attach the flywheel to the pressure plate. And these bolts will have a 25 foot-pound torque spec to them. I forgot to mention, the flywheel bolts are 14mm bolts. And these ones are 10mm. So I went ahead and sprayed the surface of the pressure plate that mates up to the clutch disc. Just going to kind of slide it right here. Hold it right there. And start threading the bolts. Don't tighten down any of the bolts until you go all the way around, as the pressure plate needs some aligning. I want to back that one out before I put it in, because it's not threading by hand. So for this one, I kind of want to go again top to bottom, do one bolt up here, one bolt down here, one bolt here, one bolt here, and just kind of keep on alternating back and forth. The other thing you want to make sure is that you get this as centered as possible. So right there, it looks fairly centered. So I'm going to take my ratchet and tighten down the bolt. And as you tighten this, this is going to clamp that clutch disc right into place. So that way it doesn't move. And then, like I said, I kind of want to go 180 degrees from that one. Although I'm not going to be able to, as tightening down that one pulled the bolts out down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually now going to tighten this one over here, as it's going to draw the pressure plate in. So even though I threaded them, they pulled out of the threads just a tiny bit. I didn't thread them far enough before I started tightening. So now that's nice and clamped down. So now I should be able to rethread the bolts down here on the bottom of the pressure plate. And tighten them. So instead of going 180 to 180 like I'd wanted to, I'm going kind of around the world. And you can even kind of see these fingers are moving in a little bit as I tighten down the bolts, and the pressure plate engages the clutch disc. So that's nice and tight. We'll do the last one here. And like I said, I can watch the pressure plate fingers in the middle go down as the clutch disc gets engaged. But now that the pressure plate is mated for all of them, I'm going to go ahead and just do a time lapse for the other 4 bolts, and then for the torque spec, or for torquing them down. Being that it's only 25 foot-pounds of torque, I don't think I need to worry about the motor rotating for these ones, so I'm just going to hopefully not have to use that pry bar, but we'll see you after the time lapse. So now that all 8 pressure plate bolts are torqued down, I can go ahead and just pull this clutch tool out and then just check and make sure. It should slide right back in once you get it aligned. So now I'll be able to go and just slide the transmission right onto the pressure plate and flywheel assembly and make the 2 halves. But first I do need to figure out what the bolts are that hold the 2 together. There's 6 of them, and in the time that this has been apart, because I took this truck apart starting back in 2017, I have lost the bolts. So thankfully I have some other trucks that I can match up. I'll go to the store, get some grade 8 bolts. So, but I'll make sure that I get the proper bolts to put these 2 halves together. And we'll be back at it once I get those.